America has given the people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice.
Clark, U.S. Congressman, born and raised in the city of Detroit, and I am completely anti-debt, not just government debt, but I'm urging everyone right now who is personally in debt to get out of debt as quickly as you can. It is a racket to keep our people enslaved financially. I mean, our society is really trapped and buried in debt. So if we can relieve people of personal debt, we can see more jobs being created in this country because people will be able to buy more responsibly. They'll be able to invest their money. So cutting personal debt for me will be one of the biggest ways to stimulate job growth in America and also relieve a huge burden off of people and families right now. Someone's going paycheck to paycheck, it's usually because they have other bills as well. You see, it's not just that they're low income. They're probably in debt in other areas. So that's why we need to help educate people on not to borrow, on not to use their credit card to buy essentials, because what it starts is a vicious cycle that you can't get out of. And these payday lenders take advantage of that. They know you're not going to be able to pay off that loan by your next paycheck. That's why they want you to borrow almost the full amount of what your paycheck is. They know you're not going to be able to pay it off. And they say the interest rate is reasonable. Yeah, if you paid off the loan the next day, it's reasonable. But when that interest rate compounds on interest, that 10% turns into 100% and many times 1,000% interest rate. That's outrageous.
This is where I grew up. Flint, Michigan. This is, kind of where I learned to prey on the poor in Flint, Michigan. I didn't know any different. I thought all I could do to make a living was to prey on the poor and take advantage of the people that can't protect themselves.
I guess my feelings of preying on the poor is they're down and out and they can't protect themselves. These people that we take advantage of in payday loans and in pawn loans and title loans, they can't defend themselves. They have nowhere else to go. And what I've learned over the years of being in all these predatory lending businesses is predatory lending isn't a price sensitive product. People know that they spend too much money for milk when they need it quick and convenient at the gas station instead of going and getting it at the supermarket, and they make those decisions logically. But when it comes to predatory lending and quick money, people they don't care the cost. They do not care the cost. They just need the money because they're in a desperate situation and they'll pay whatever they need. It all comes down to greed. This is the greediest industry that I have ever seen. This and pawnbrokers are the greediest people I've ever met.
Sure, I'm Aaron Handelsman, and I work at Southwest Solutions as a financial coach. Well, most of the clients I work with are pretty thoroughly challenged, both economically and socially. A lot of them don't have income, which is one of the major difficulties of being a financial coach in this situation. But most of my clients are unbanked. They don't, generally speaking, operate within traditional financial institutions. A lot of them don't have any sort of steady stream of income, and best case scenario, it's public benefits, EBT, unemployment, and in that case I would say that their funds are generally not particularly managed in any sort of organized fashion.
One thing is to educate people if they want financial freedom. It's not always based on the amount of money that they're making. It's not that they need more income. It's what they need to do is cut back on their expenses. And that debt is not good. Possibly some debt if it's an investment to create jobs, yes. But otherwise it's not. Because as the scriptures say, when you're in debt, you're beholden to that person you owe money to. You don't want to be in that situation. What we've got to do is educate people to disregard the popular media. The popular media wants people to buy more and more stuff, even if they don't have the money for it. Even though they don't need the stuff, they want them to buy it, borrow the money to do that, because the financial system, they make money off that interest. And then you use part of that money to donate back to the politicians, who then maintain the system. So what we need to do, though, is educate people, and that's been one of my biggest roles as a U.S. Congressman. It's not just to pass legislation in Congress or to make the legal system work for people. It's to educate the public that they don't need to borrow money to be happy.
We have a lot of people that they use payday loans because, first of all, a lot of the immigrants, not all of the banks accept the matrícula consular that some of the banks around this area are used to. So, but then it's easier for them to be able to just present their payroll check into a payday loan and get something in return right there. Or they started using them like lending or financial institutions, and they went into the check system, and therefore they're not eligible to have a bank account or a savings account, so they're using payday loans instead. It's easier, somehow easier for them. Sometimes it just becomes an income issue. There's not enough income to understand the whole perspectives of money management. There's not much to manage, right? So they need all the way to understanding the basics, to learning how to dispute the accounts, how do they fight identity theft, how to establish credit. Well, you're giving the clients more resources. Like, you're able to provide and say, okay, well, this credit union, although your credit is not perfect, the credit union will be able to open an account or give you a secured loan. There is going to be definitely an interest, but at the same time, you're building credit, whether with a payday, you're just having to pay them, but it's not reported anywhere in your credit. So at least you're having now a line of credit running, establishing something that later on is going to help you get where you need to be.
You ever use a pawn shop?
Yes, sir. I have, but that's when I had something to pawn, but I never worked at a pawn shop.
No, but you used them to get a loan, or?
Yes, sir.
What do you think about them?
I think the next best thing to having a job, if you got something of value, you can pawn it. They give you a fair price on it. You got, 30 days or 90 days to get it out. If you don't get it out in 90 days, you just pay your entrance on it. And
which one do you use?
Well, I was using Julie's.
Julie's
in Flint. That's about the only one I use. That's been a long time ago since I used the pawn shop. I just try to just stay out of trouble, man, and do the right thing. And
you ever use a payday loan?
I never used a payday loan because I was always didn't have a checking account. But I've got a little savings account. I'm paying my child support and stuff like that, but it's still kind of hard when you don't have a real job. But I'm not getting in no trouble. Staying out of trouble.
Payday loans are definitely, it's a horribly vicious cycle, something I always try to steer clients away from. Oftentimes it's not something that they're particularly eager to talk about. I think they know at a certain level that it's cyclical and not, not really an ideal situation to be in. Once you're in that vein, it's very difficult to extricate yourself. So with a payday loan, I mean, basically you're taking your paycheck, getting a loan at an extremely high interest rate, and for the most part, the institutions that are offering these loans are unregulated, so they basically have, a blank slate. I mean, there is some regulation, but it's not at the level where it's actually going to protect the people who are being preyed upon by payday lenders. So individuals who are already excluded from traditional sources of credit, like, your basic bank loan, are forced to resort to this more unregulated market, which evolved precisely out of this void that has been created by financial institutions who don't tend to lend to people who are low income and perhaps with unsteady employment or non-traditional employment. So they're forced into a corner that sort of conspires to keep them in poverty.
But we used to drive people into the cycle of debt, and we used to think that that was the best thing in the world for them to come pay us $82.50 every 2 weeks when they got paid. I put customers into a position where they were borrowing, they were getting payday loans for more money than they actually made. More money than they take home, they had borrowed from me. And that's just what the industry is. I mean, at the CFSA conferences and all the people that were in the payday loan business, we all used to laugh about this, about how ridiculous it is and how foolish our customers are to come pay us $82.50 every 2 weeks for years on end. But that's how we all made money. That's how my friends sold out for $30 million 2 years ago. That's why the industry is so wealthy, is because we charge these huge rates. I became a multi-millionaire from bankruptcy in '99 to worth almost $10 million in 2005 at $16.50 per hundred. Now that is crazy, and the average price across the country is $17.50 a hundred, and not even $16.50, and that's how much money I made. Now, for the past 6 years, I've been fighting litigation against greedy partners because Jennifer Granholm thought a fair price would be $13.50 a hundred, and they all sued me because I went and said no, I want it to be at least $15. But the national guys knew that the business and the industry could still profit at $13.50 a hundred, and I propose federal regulations across the country in every state at $12 per hundred. And if we were to pass legislation like that, it would save the hardworking American people $500 million a month in unnecessary predatory lending fees just in the payday loan industry. We haven't even touched in the pawn industry or title loans. And that's what needs to be done, and it needs to be done ASAP.
Yeah, I've got customers been coming here since 2002. There's actually customers here still coming in. Were here before I was here.
So this is part of the community now.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's a necessity.
Oh yeah, it really is. It's a badly needed service. Because like I say, the banks won't do anything for these people. These folks couldn't get a loan from a bank. Most of their credit ratings aren't that well, and they couldn't go to a bank and get a loan. All my customers are struggling. They're living day to day. If it wasn't for this industry, a lot of them would have some serious problems. Well, before the recession, we had more business then, but there was less rules and regulations involved, and so. But as time's going on and the economy's gotten worse, we've managed to pretty much maintain. I think we get better customers now than we were then.
So the economy doesn't have an effect on payday loans necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think not really, no.
How long have you been using payday loans?
Going on 7 years now. It's been a struggle, Life was more manageable before I retired. But after the first and second year after retirement, I needed $500 more to go over that. That's why I'm here today. Still working on that $500. I've been procrastinating about paying it off. But so far I haven't done that. So I call myself coming up with a plan. Just this week, me and my wife were talking. We're gonna, instead of taking away $50, we're gonna leave $50 each month. There's no way out for me. So only place that helps me is Cash Nows. And that's why I'm here today. They're the only ones that seems to want to help. Maybe they should have helped them out or something. I don't know.
First of all, that person that borrowed that money from that payday lender, they're in a financial crisis, or at least they perceive themselves in that. So immediately we've got to stabilize their situation. That's where people like me, we can help, the members of Congress, because we can contact the lender, we can contact the other creditors that that person owes money to that put them in debt, and the reason why now they need this payday loan, because they've had all these other bills that they can't afford to pay, and now they've got to go to a payday lender to get some quick cash to bridge them over until they get their paycheck. So going to the member of Congress can help because the lender is more likely to work with us to provide a reasonable payment for them. Well, I believe that's what government can do. Yes, we need to regulate the financial services industry, but also we need to provide more support so that we can get the education and job training that we need. We don't educate people on how to manage their money, basic management. So I believe we should have early education in grade school on how to manage money and the cost of borrowing money, understanding about compounding interest rates. When you have to pay interest on top of your interest, that's when you get ripped off big time. So we've got to do that, but then also I need to encourage the public to demand their elected officials to change the political system, the regulatory system, so it doesn't encourage people to get more and more in debt that they can't get out of.
I think most people have a very, very limited understanding of basic financial concepts in the first place, right? We live in a country where there's a national curriculum that's largely standardized with small variations. Financial education is not a part of that, really, unless you're in a special situation. So we're dealing with people who, unless you had parents who sat down with you and talked to you about interest rates and credit scores, which I can't imagine from my experience is the vast majority of the population, and you're not going to know about these things, let alone really detailed legalese about, interest rates and late fees and these sorts of things. People who are driven to take money out of payday lenders or payday lending institutions aren't reading the fine print because they're already desperate. And so when you're desperate, you're not making a calculated decision with your full capacities, right? You're in a situation of extreme duress and you're just going to grab at whatever is available. And payday lenders make themselves available because they know they can take advantage of people who are already desperate. I think our culture is thoroughly broken around issues of money. I mean, the whole notion of payday lending wouldn't exist if we weren't so greedy in the first place, right? There needs to be a sort of sense of social equity where value systems are not based upon profit exclusively, but rather on the health of a community. So that would be one thing that would certainly address this problem. But given the context we are working in, which is a sort of quasi-capitalistic, business-run society, I would say that introducing a different form of education into the basic curriculum, like basics of finance, this country is so built on money and on being able to manage money that to deprive people of basic knowledge of how to handle their money effectively seems kind of criminal to me. Because unless you're already in a family that has a certain amount of financial stability and success, you have no model for creating that for yourself. So there is a sort of cyclical element. People learn what they experience, and certainly don't believe that people are not capable of bringing themselves out of things. But to a large degree, when it comes to money and finance, you learn what you see, and it's not like where maybe you grew up in a family that only spoke Spanish or Arabic, but then you go to school and there are kids speaking English and you can learn English. If you don't come from an environment where people are talking about money and understanding money and how to manage it well, there's not really any place you can go to learn about that before, unless it's through the school of hard knocks, right?
How many people do you know that are in the same situation?
Oh, good. The whole 48205 comes here. There's no help out there for them. There's no way out. So we're stuck.